right now on Capitol Hill, we've got a good friend of ours, Republican Senator John Thune from South Dakota. Willie Geist, a man that Mika Brzezinski and I saw break in half, like a chair. He was just sitting there, and just the power. I mean, it's like, I'm expecting 100 years from now, instead of kids singing the legend of Davy Crockett, they'll be singing about a lumberjack from the Dakotas that could break a chair with a single claw.
That story is especially great with no context whatsoever. That's like in his office ripping the arms off his chair.
Yeah. It's what makes our show our show. We do shortcuts.
You can either provide context, Senator, or not. Perhaps we'll just move. We'll move right past that.
Yeah, we may just want to move on.
Yeah, let's blow past it this time. Let me ask you, Senator. We're about 3 hours away now from a big moment, perhaps an historic moment for the country here, as the Supreme Court rules on the Affordable Health Care Act. Do you think it would be a good thing for the country, Senator, if the Supreme Court strikes down this entire law?
I do. I think what that would do is create an opportunity for us to really do this the right way. I think that when this was rushed through a few years ago, it was done, on a party line vote. 2,700-page bill. I think the American people made it very clear they don't like this law, and there is a much better way. We believe that if you approach this and take common sense reforms, go on a step-by-step process in which you actually listen to the American people, that you can come up with a much better product, and one that actually will lower costs and deal with many of the issues that Americans want to see dealt with on health care, which, again, namely, is affordability. And I think that's where the Obamacare proposal actually, now we're finding out, is not living up to expectations. It is raising costs. It is hurting jobs out there because small businesses are dealing with these mandates and the uncertainty that's associated with the bill. And as a consequence, we're not seeing people getting back to work.
All right, Harold Ford Jr.
Senator John, good morning.
By the way, did you guys play basketball together in the house gym?
We were the champs.
Were you really? You and John?
Yeah, he did all the scoring. It was.
Well, he was. He moved quickly for a big man, didn't he?
Well, the only thing about that, I wasn't good enough to make the Scarborough Tour de Force team, and so Harold was nice enough. Harold was nice enough to pick me up, and
so Willie, what do you think I was doing while these guys were running up and down the court?
I'd say a sack of Crystal Burgers.
I had a sack of Crystal Burgers.
A pack of menthols.
A pack of menthols. Yeah. That's exactly it. And I would watch them, but Thune and Harold, man, they're good. They're very good.
It was in the days before they banned smoking in the house. So yeah, I'm guessing that.
John, let me ask you a quick question. Once we get past the health care conversation today, and obviously the coverage that will come, as you well know, members of the business community, and for that matter, I think the country is deeply concerned about what happens if Congress doesn't act on the tax cuts and entitlements and sequestration. Two things. Is there truth to these stories that there's some in the Senate, maybe including you, trying to draft a map, draft a plan, a path to some sort of outcome that will avoid some of these things before the election? And if not, is there a map being drafted for what happens after the election?
Well, there are people on both sides, Harold, who would love to see this addressed before the election for a lot of reasons, and not the least of which is I think that it's hurting the economy now. We've all seen these projections. The Congressional Budget Office has said if the fiscal cliff isn't addressed before the end of the year, that in the first half of next year it could cost us 1.3% of economic growth, which is about 1.3 million jobs. But there's also, the CBO is also saying that this year, because of the uncertainty associated with not knowing what's going to happen on tax rates and the sequester and all these other things, that it could cost us 0.5% of economic growth now. And so there is interest on both sides to do that. I think a lot of it will depend probably on, the House of Representatives obviously this next month is going to act on the tax rates, on whether or not there is enough bipartisan support in the Senate to do something, and probably where the president comes down on this. I don't think the Democrats in the Senate are going to do anything unless the president's on board with that. But it would make a lot of sense to take that off the table so we're not dealing with this big pileup after the election in the middle of a lame duck session.
John Meacham.
Governor Dean, this is a complicated bill. Obviously, the expansion of Medicaid is hugely important. The tax subsidies are hugely important. If you were an incumbent governor right now, how would you be feeling about the Medicaid provisions?
I'd want those Medicaid provisions kept intact by the court. I think they probably will be. We built our universal health care program for kids on a Clinton expansion of Medicaid. Medicaid is probably the most important part of this bill. It's more important than all the other things, all the controversial things. Some of the states don't like it, but that's because they've been paying very, very little. In Texas, for example, has 25% of its adults uninsured, 22% of its children uninsured. The Medicaid piece is going to do more than anything else to fix that. So I hope that I really want to see that continue. As I said, we provided universal, for 20 years we provided universal health care for all our kids under 18, and we did it through Medicaid.
Let's bring back in NBC News political director and suffering Dodgers fan Chuck Todd. Chuck, what's the impact on the presidential race? You know, there's been some people have been talking about this. You look at Mitt Romney attacking Obamacare, as he calls it, which is, of course, a follow-up to Romney Care, and I just find it hard to believe that that's going to draw any blood in the campaign moving forward if it is overturned.
Well, look, I think it's the White House. They certainly believe that anything that is an overturn of anything is bad for them politically. All right. I mean, there's you know how everybody has their own little scenarios. Oh, this could actually help them this way or vice versa. And you talk to Republicans, and the bottom line is they need a full uphold. Anything less, they're explaining, right? And anytime you're explaining in politics, you're losing as far as the argument's concerned.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know that there's a lot of, well, you know, if you hit the backboard, top of the scoreboard, nothing, you know, maybe it does this way. I have talked to some Republican strategists who secretly hope it's fully upheld only for this one reason. Not about base enthusiasm. That's already there. They don't want to have a policy debate on health care in the fall of sort of that if you do an overturn of some sort, then they got to go out there with their own plan. And talking to these strategists, and they just say, look, history shows Republicans usually don't win arguments on health care if health care is part of the campaign debate.
John?
I think, obviously, Chuck's exactly right, and we wonder why people have little faith in institutions or elected officials and give Congress a margin of error approval
9% rating, yeah. Other than, of course, John Thune, who I think most of the kids all across America love. The fruited plains are crazy for Thune.
One thing we can all agree on. Senator, let me ask you before we let you go here. We know you don't like what you call Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. We know you'd like to see it stricken down today. What in specific terms would the plan be from you and from the Republican Party to replace it?
Well, I think first off, just approaching this in an entirely different way, not rolling out a huge 2,700-page bill and rushing something through. I think listening to the American people, approaching this, as I said, in a step-by-step way. I mean, I think that health care is a very real issue for most Americans. They wanted to see it addressed, but it doesn't take a $2.5 trillion expansion of the federal government in order to do that. And we believe that there are things, we've proposed many things in the past that we think make a lot of sense. Interstate sales of insurance, allowing people to buy across state lines, join small business health plans, expansion of HSAs, health savings accounts, medical malpractice reform, allowing states to work with the federal government on high-risk pools to strengthen those so you can cover people with pre-existing conditions. There are a whole range of things that we think make a lot of sense, but this bill is so big, so massive, and so ununderstandable to the American people. I think that's the thing that has frustrated most Americans. It's very unpopular out there, and I hope the court does overturn it, but either way, you know this is going to be a major issue of debate in the fall campaigns, and I think it rightly should be.
All right, hey, Senator John Thune, thanks. It's always great to see you. Howard Dean, you know, I'm critical of many in my Republican Party who set their hair on fire, scare like young children and puppy dogs. John Thune, though, it'd be harder for you to attack John Thune if you were vice president-elect. I mean, he's very Midwest. He's very South Dakota. He's a great guy, right?
All we want is people who will talk reasonably and compromise someplace where we can actually get something done.
And not read the op-ed pages. All right, thank you so much.
The Wall Street Journal is an extremist publication. We don't need to read that.
Listen to you. Oh, my Lord, Howard Dean, thank you so much for being with us.